Friends, Patrick Clark here, joined by Brian as always, and one of our best friends, and maybe I guess some would say one of our first friends, Mr. John Young. Um, Last week we went through the Carson era top 30 men, and this week we're going to hit the women up and see what we have in store, like what differences John and Brian have, so that way we can compile a comprehensive top 30 list. Brian, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. No, looking forward to it. It's super fun to go back into the history. John and I are going to do the same kind of raw conversation that we had last with the men and kind of do our rankings for you guys live here. Before we get to that, I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been supportive of us so far as we've been trying to start out on this endeavor. If you would like to do that, head on over to our Patreon, support us there. It's the best way to kind of keep this content going. And then just as June is kind of coming to an end, July is coming up, we're really going to shift our focus in July leading up and building to the 2023 CrossFit Games. Most of June, I've wanted to look back, see some of the cool stuff from semifinals, and then also look back at kind of some of the history that I think is good for setting the stage for what we're about to see with, obviously a super impressive group of CrossFit Games athletes this year.
Yeah, like Brian said, we appreciate the support. As you can see, click the link in the bio for our Patreon. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. We're going to go to a tier system that includes a bunch of cool stuff as well. So just click on the link in the bio, see what we have to offer. All right, moving on to the ladies. We're going to talk about the Carson era top 30 women. Are you guys ready for this?
Let's get into it.
All right.
Yeah, and so just like with the men, we're gonna start at the top for this and kind of work our way down. In the written versions that have been coming out on the website, we started at 30 and have worked our way back up based on this conversation. So right off the bat, starting with number one from this era, John and I both made these lists completely independently of each other. He sent me his over. We put them into this spreadsheet and kind of give you guys a picture and color diagram here to see some similarities and differences that we had. But first in this era was Annie Thorsdottir for each of us. John, what makes her kind of the slam dunk, easy number one pick here?
Well, first off, her career spans all of Carson. It's not just a few years at the end or in the beginning. And then, I mean, she has 2 first place and 2 second place, and then obviously continued on. Murph, the only thing that could stop her from being first is Murph, because she's not a big fan of that workout. But other than that, she's pretty undisputed as far as the women in Carson, and still freaking going at it today. I know that doesn't count for this list, but nobody else in the Carson era compares to her resume-wise. She has the most event wins out of everybody. It's pretty undisputed. Same as it was for Rich Froning. Maybe not as undisputed as Rich Froning, but same case.
Yeah, absolutely. Super well said. And I do think it's cool to look back at those event wins and to realize, first of all, she, like John said, she was there in 2010, second, first. She missed the games in 2013. Comes back another second in 2014. Murph knocked her out of 2015, and she finished 13th in 2016. So she's there through this entire time period. And a lot of the other women that were kind of in contention, not all of them, but a few of them were either there early or late, but not as consistently as Annie. She racked up 12 event wins over those 6 years at the games, and it was 5.5 years really. Obviously, she had to withdraw in 2015. She had 2 wins in 2010. No, 4 wins in 2010. If you haven't gone back and looked at the 2010 women's leaderboard, it was more or less her and Kristen Clever just winning and taking second on every workout. Probably one of the iconic battles of all time in the women's side, along with 2017 between Cara and Tia. Goes on to have 3 more wins in 2011, 2 wins in 2013, 2 wins in 2014, and a win in 2016, just kind of showing dominance in a variety of different ways, consistency over this entire period of time. So clear number one, Annie Thorsdottir.
Yeah, it's nice to see you guys agreeing on something. So Annie at number one, really good, guys. Good job on that one. However, the next 5, these compromised the other women during the Carson era that actually won the title. So this is where it kind of gets a little tricky. Explain your thought process here.
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. Spots 2, 3, 4, and 5. We had the same women there. We did have Camille coming in at the 4 spot, but he had Katrin all the way up at 2. I had her at 5. I had Sam Briggs at 2. He had her at 3. And I had Kristen Clever at 3. He had her at 5. One thing that all 4 of these women have in common is that they have won the CrossFit Games, and they did win the CrossFit Games during this time period, obviously with Katrin doing it twice. John, I'm guessing that's why you have her at number 2.
Yeah. I mean, she has the 2 greatest accomplishments out of everybody on this list, Annie included. I clearly value level of competition way more than Brian does. I think Brian just looks at the spreadsheet and looks at the numbers and says, this person has more numbers than this person. But level of competition means so much to me. 2010 compared to 2016 is so much different. It's about the same difference as my and Brian's snatch. How big of a difference 2010 and 2016 are. Okay. And that really pushes Kristen Clever down. You can't deny what she's done. I mean, she got first and then second in 2011, and then fourth in 2012, and then she deteriorated. Everybody got too fit for her. 32nd, and then can't make it anymore. They're too fit. That pushes her down for me. She was a product of just being the best at that time, and then when it came to getting better, she couldn't hang. Where Katrin, I get she was throughout all of Carson for the most part. Came in 2012. Was that her rookie year, 2012, I believe? Mm-hmm. 30th, 24th, and then didn't make it because of some legless rope climbs, and then first. I value improvement, especially in the harder years of this era, because I think there was a huge jump in fitness. And then taking first in 2015 and 2016, I think are the greatest things anybody in this list has done. She is better than Annie in that space, but Annie has the whole entire Carson era that she was successful in. So it's hard to take that away from Annie. And to me, that just makes her, I have no problem putting Sam Briggs above her just for the same reason as Annie, because Sam Briggs was successful throughout that whole entire era and then was fourth and fourth in the same years, 2015, 2016. So clearly she was still super competitive in that time. Sam Briggs for me is kind of like Josh Bridges. She's just a freak. It's hard to, she's an icon. You know what I mean? It's hard to bet against her. But Katrin has she's number 2 for me for those reasons, because of her 2 wins. Nothing else. Kristen Clever is irrelevant. I would put her lower.
Irrelevant?
Yeah, I would put her lower if I could. Now, she was super successful way back in the day and did win. And if you'll notice, I have all the champions. I had this for the most part on the guys too. All of the champions were above non-champions, right? I had Annie, Katrin, Sam won in 2013, Camille won in 2014. Basically, I ranked the champions by fitness level. Mm-hmm. But Kristen Clever can't hold a candle to anybody in the top 11 in fitness. Actually fitness, how fit are you? And that's hard for me to rank so high, because I know you're just a product of being there early. You know what I mean? I know that sounds bad, but
no, I mean it's
the whole Carson era. She faded the whole second half of the Carson era. She's not there because she's not good enough. And Katrin was the best one in the second half, right? I know.
It makes
5, but
it makes perfect sense. It's good for conversation, and it's good for people to hear that and to see that, when evaluating these athletes against each other, those are the very real things that you have to consider. In the case of Kristen Clever compared to Katrin Davidsdottir, and to me, and I know you're going to probably hate this example, but it's somewhat similar to evaluating Rich Froning's career to Matt Fraser's career. And you're blaming Rich for competing at the time that he competed, but that was the time that he competed. And any time that you show up as an athlete to compete, all you can do is perform against the test and the opponents that are presented to you. These types of conversations, expand to sports of all different kinds. Tennis is a great example because it's an individual sport. Golf is a great example too. And there's periods of time where Tiger Woods and Roger Federer were unbeatable, and someone would say, yeah, but they didn't have the high level of competition that someone like Novak Djokovic or Brooks Koepka had when they were great, as the game continued to progress. And it's like, okay, we're going to punish those guys for doing as good as they possibly could against the field of play that was before them. And it's a valid conversation. For me, when I was looking at the list here, as you said, I obviously favor longevity to a degree. I do try to balance in the weight of the field. I think that I'm not opposed to moving Katrin up the list a little bit. I think you also know that I have a little bit of, a first is a first, and the way that she won the title in 2015 is no fault of her own, no fault of her coach. What?
Yeah, you have a grudge against how she won 2015.
Yeah, but this is on the CrossFit Games, and everyone knows it. She did no work. She made no effort, and she was awarded 54, 56 points, whatever it was, a tie for 13th, along with the rest of the women's field. And I still, to this day, think that we haven't learned that lesson strongly enough. And we saw, remnants of it at semifinals this year. So I think that if we have to, it's cutting the margins thin here. I think that it makes sense to leave Camille in 4 since we both have her there. I think I'd be comfortable with Briggs, David's daughter, Bazinet, and Clever for the top 4, or for the 2 through 5.
I'm good with that. You want to talk about Sam Briggs a little bit?
Let's give her some love. Yeah, let's give her some love for sure. The one thing about Sam Briggs is, John kind of mentioned it. She did have the win in 2013. 3 other 4th place finishes. Those were in 2011, 15, 16. And then you have 9 event wins during this time. Just to put it in, we mentioned that Kristen Clever had a bunch of wins. She had 5 event wins in 2010. Katrin Davis' daughter had 4, all of them coming in 2015 and 16. And that those combined add up to the number of events wins that Sam Briggs had. And I think that it was a good comparison when you mentioned her in the same breath as Josh Bridges. Obviously, Bridges doesn't have a title, but they do both have these like incredibly defining moments from their career. If you haven't watched the final of 2011, Sam wins the last 2 events, the end 2 and the end 3. She has, dominating performances on the row 1 and 2 in 2013, along with sprint chipper. She wins Midline Madness, ranch trail runs, climbing snails, just the list goes on and on of these great accomplishments that she's had. So anything you want to add about Sam before we move down the list?
No, you basically covered it. Like Josh Bridges, she just has these memorable moments all throughout her career, and it's hard for people to do. I don't know how you create them, but like it's valuable. It's hard to put a number value on it, but there's something to be an iconic. Spieler had it, Briggs had it, Bridges had it. It's just, in those people, whatever it is, I think they deserve to be higher on the list because of those moments.
And then, we haven't really mentioned Camille much. She's actually the only one of these women that competed all 7 years during this time period. She started in 2010, 9th place, 8th place, 6th place. So 3 straight top 10s, bounced down to 16th, then obviously wins in 2014, which, the highlight of her career. Had some key event wins in 21-15 9 complex that year that kind of propelled the momentum that she needed forward. Her event wins are very much in line with what she's good at. Fran in 2012, the complex there in 2014, triangle coupling in 2015. So high skill gymnastics, barbell cycling combination. You're going to see great things from Camille. And I think that, a big nod to her. There's a couple, maybe 1 or 2 others on this list that competed all 7 years. I think Rebecca Voigt is the only other one that had all 7 years during this time period. So we know that longevity in this sport is difficult to maintain, and Camille did it exceptionally, as good as anyone really could during this time period. So really strong top 5. I know that you might say that Chris Clever would get beat by some of these next women, but this is kind of a big tier here, this next tier. So we're going to move on from the top 5, and we'll just, in no particular order here, we have Tia Claire Toomey, Rebecca Voigt, Julie Fouché, Val Voberl, Cara Webb, Elizabeth Akinwale, and Sarah Sigmund's daughter. PC, if you just scroll down 1 there, we can see that we had most of these same women in the same category, and then John had Akinwale just that 1 spot lower. Go back up so we can. Oh yeah, that's good. So I think, John, we're gonna let's start with the top here. We like between Tia and maybe Julie. How'd you go with Julie?
She was successful all the years she competed, and like the reason she stopped is because she wanted to get her doctorate degree. Like she stopped so she could go be a doctor. It wasn't like the field passed her up. You know what I mean? And like whenever you have a whole bunch of years and you're like, fourth, 18th, 35th, right? Like the field has passed you up. You're not fit anymore compared to the whole entire field. You're not as good. Everybody got fitter and you didn't. That was not the case with her. She just stopped. I felt like she had a very, very big impact whenever she was competing.
What years did she compete at the games? How'd she do during those years?
So 2010, she was 5th. 2011, she was 5th. 2012, she was 2nd. 2014, she was 3rd.
And then just for the comparison's sake, what years did Tia compete and how'd she do?
2015 and 2016, she was 2nd in both.
Okay, so what happened to placing an emphasis on the later years?
Well, that's why she's 7th, right? Or that's why I have her on the very next spot. It wasn't like, and you have to understand, Tia was not Tia that we know in this era.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she was still, take all the other variables out of it. She was placing 2nd place in the 2 most difficult years. And then you have a woman in Julie Fouché with 4 top 5 finishes in what you would consider to be easier years. I think that it's very, very small margins here.
I agree. I think it's small margins. And, like Tia won 2 events. They were the ocean swim and the suicide sprint. Nothing was CrossFitty. Those 2015, I mean, we didn't even know who she was. It was basically.
Well, that's not too important. We found out who she was that year, and she did very well, obviously.
It's making memories, though. You know what I mean? This is the impact of the Carson era, right? And I just feel like Julie Fouché was more impactful than Tia Toomey was in this Carson era. And the reason you're absolutely right. But that's why Tia, for me, is the very next spot. And Sarah is right under her because she was third in those years.
Well, right? I think that if, that's great. Yeah. So Sarah and Tia obviously should be super closely related. I might have Sarah a little bit too low on mine relative to Tia there. But I think that for the same reasons that you have Julia ahead of Tia, it's difficult not to have Val Vobrel in this conversation. She had 4 years competing. They were during the same 5 years that Julie competed. She missed 2011, where Julie missed 2013. And their finishes are almost identical, where Julie was 5.523, Vobrel was 5.533. There's only 1 spot separating them across those years. I feel like if we're going to go Julie, Tia, we have to go Val, Sarah. It's 9 and 10.
Well, Brian,
Go ahead.
Brian, I think the point of contention is Rebecca Voigt. Now,
we'll get to that in a second.
He already knows he made a mistake with Rebecca Voigt, so we'll talk with that after we agree with 7 through 9.
No, so this is an interest, really, I think an interesting part of this leaderboard because you have Julie Fouché and Val Vobrel, whose resumes look very, very similar. Fouché did manage 4 event wins in those 4 years to Vobrel's 2, and obviously edges her out with a 2nd, where Vobrel's best was a 3rd. So I think definitely you have to have Fouché ahead of Vobrel. Definitely you have to have Toomey ahead of Sigmundsdottir. And then I did want to throw Rebecca Voigt into the conversation here because Rebecca is the other woman on this list that competed all 7 years at the games. And I think that it's, that longevity does count for something. My guess is, John, that you're going to look at her performances 7th, 3rd, 10th, 11th, followed up by 24th, 31st, 35th, and say just those last 3 years, even though she's still good enough to make it, she's not really good enough to compete with some of these other women. And, the rub there is, well, Julian and Val didn't compete those years or didn't make it. And Becca was still making it.
Why did Val not make it?
I don't think she qualified that year, but it might have been family related or work.
Because I know Julie left. I don't know why Val, but Val was all in mommy mode. I know from 2014. So did she just stop?
She may have. I'm just going to check here real quick. Is California regional that year?
So it looks like we're trying to decide between the 6th and 7th spot between Tia and Julie.
No, I think we have Julie, Tia, Val, Sarah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I think that's fine.
Okay. So
and so basically we're giving the slight nod here to two women, Julie over Tia and Val over Sarah, who had twice as many years competing during this time. All of the performances that all four of these women had were 5th place or better every time they showed up to the games. So obviously an incredibly talented group of women.
The difference with Rebecca Voigt for me between those other two, Julie Fouché was 3rd, Val Volbrel was 5th, and Rebecca Voigt was 24th. Rebecca Voigt was in 2014. So you can say they competed the same years, but Rebecca Voigt was on the way down. I don't think we should reward people for getting 31st and 35th. I think.
Well, we're basically, in this case, we're rewarding her for maintaining fitness over the entire duration of the era. I mean, Val Volbrel finished 15th in the 2015 regionals, not even close to making it. So there's there's something.
Rebecca Voigt in?
What?
What region is Rebecca Voigt in and Val Volbrel in?
Same region.
Okay.
That year, Rebecca Voigt finished 15th or 5th to Val Volbrel's 15th.
Gotcha.
So, I don't think it's off base what you're saying, but I also do think that there's something to be said for being able to continuously make it. We see a lot of really talented athletes that can make it once, make it twice, make it 3 times. And beyond that, it's just really difficult to maintain that fitness over time that's required for the qualifying stage just to get there. And then obviously when you are the person who's able to continuously get there, you run the risk of the field kind of globally catching up to you. And keep in mind also that, Rebecca is continuing to do that as she's, continuing to age. By the time she's making it in 2015 and Val's not, she's 34. That's 2015. She still makes it next year at 35. I think we have to give some credit to the longevity.
So I think right now, we're looking at 10 Voigt, but where is that ranking her ahead of Cara?
Yeah. So I think that, we have to bring Cara into the conversation here. And even though this is a relatively kind of a big tier of athletes, there's a reason that they're all on here. And Cara kind of enters the equation here on the tail end of this era with some weird circumstances, quite frankly. She shows up in 2013 and takes 12th. It's a great finish. 2014, she had to withdraw due to a pinch in her neck and a nerve in her neck in the last day of competition. She would have placed 1st or 2nd that year. There's like 100% guarantee that she would have been 1st or 2nd. Follows up with a 5th in 2015, and that's on the tail end of passing out basically across the finish line of Murph, rallying and performing in a snatch workout a couple hours later and still parlaying that into a 5th place finish, and then 7th in 2016 in what we know was a very competitive year with obviously that, entry of Tia and Sarah into the conversation. So John, we've already ranked some women above Rebecca Voigt that have done fairly well, but really I'm not sure what to do with Cara's 2014 performance.
I feel like you have to take into consideration that I know she didn't do it, so it's not worth the same amount. But I think you could say if or across our board right now we had 12th, 5th, 5th, 7th. Let's just say that's what it was. Would you rate her above Rebecca Voigt if she had 12th, 5th, 5th, 7th?
I think probably, it's hard to ignore the fact that she's beating her by, dozens of spots in 3 consecutive years at the games when they were there together, and I think that this is kind of this tail end of this group of women that we're evaluating, and it's just a lot of high level performances, when we're looking up and down the board and we just see single digits for most of the women and Rebecca Voigt only having 2 of those across 7 years. Even though the longevity is phenomenal, you have to, I think, reward the excellence.
Yeah, and also, what is Rebecca Voigt's biggest moment? Does anything come to your head?
Yeah, I think it is just the longevity. The 2011.
So give me a moment that you remember.
It's got to either be 2011 or 2012, her two best years, I think, relative to the competition with the event wins that she managed to have. Event wins obviously play huge. The problem is that she won the end one in 2011, and then Sam Briggs goes on to win both the end 2 and 3, so overshadows that. So it's probably the rope sled win in 2012.
Okay. And like that compared to Kara's Murph, Kara cleaning after Murph, Kara winning the squat clean pyramid in 2016. Like, I remember her dominating that event, and like I'm pretty sure it was like Heber and Marston maybe tried to beat her with the same weights. I think Marston got her and Heber couldn't, but like Kara has a handful of like just moments that I think are very, very memorable. And I mean, I would put her ahead of Rebecca Voigt. I also think just who's fitter, Kara's fitter. You know what I mean?
You always fall back on that. Anyway, I'm okay with it. I think that this conversation in this range of these women really highlights that there were 10 or 11 really, really high level performers during this time period. Sorting out the little nuances of who to place ahead of whom comes down to small things. Each of them has incredible accomplishments. So we're going to go ahead with Kara at number 10, Rebecca Voigt at number 11.
And then we get into like a weird space of a whole bunch of how do you rank 2016 versus 2012.
Yeah, so I think before that we're gonna acknowledge some of the women here that we have kind of in a very tight range. You have Latondra one spot ahead of me, Valenzuela one spot ahead of me, and I have Akinwale a few spots ahead of those women. I think that those are, and then we have Talina Fortunato at the same spot. So I feel like those are our next 4 for sure. You feel good with that as the next 4?
Yeah.
And then I'll just kind of set the stage here, kind of tell you what I think. And if you have any big pushback on it, let me know.
I think Christy Phillips should probably be in that mix too.
Yeah, totally fine. So we'll go with these 5 women. What the heck did I just do? So Akinwale, 6 event wins, and I think that this plays really big in her favor. 5 straight games appearances between 2011 2015. Her best was a 2012. She was 7th. She had a 10th, 13th, 14th, and then a 25th in 2015. Combined, the other 4 women that we're evaluating here in this had only had 5 event wins. So she had more event wins individually than any of them, and some of them were pretty cool events like Killer Cage, the double banger, the 2012 clean ladder, the clean speed ladder in 2014, the soccer chipper in 2015. I mean, those are some highlights. And I think that really the only other person that has a highlight from this entire list that matches at all to some of those is Michelle Latondra's wins in the pool in 2013 and push pull in 2014. But again, the push pull is really overshadowed by what happened on the men's side of that event. Do you feel like you maybe slighted Elizabeth a little bit here, John?
I do.
Oh my God, we got an admission from John.
I'm good with Elizabeth being the next one. I think I have her too low. I think she's very consistent, like in her competing career, and she does have 6 event wins. I think that counts for a lot. And I mean, when you think back in the good old days, like her Killer Cage win is still talked about whenever we talk about memories.
And six event wins for a career, and we're only this is her career, but we're only focused on these 7 years. Obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 puts her in a tie for 7th all time with Chris Clever and Laura Horvath. So it's pretty good company. It's hard to win anything at the CrossFit Games. 6 event wins, I think, is pretty impressive for Akinwale. So we're going to put her 12. I think we basically have to go with the order that we both have here for the next ones, which is Latondra, Valenzuela, Fortunato, and Christy Adkins Phillips.
Now, I have a question. So why do we have? So I want you to look at Talina Fortunato, her finishes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she was only there for 3 years, right? Are we really valuing those 3 years more than Brooke Wells and Carrie Pierce?
Oh, you want to bring Brooke and Carrie into the conversation already?
Already.
Now,
Yeah.
listen, I am good with putting Latondra, like having your order: Akinwale, Latondra, Valenzuela, and then probably Christy Phillips, just for consistency. Christy Atkins, but like I'm good with those being the next 4. And then are you good with that? You want to call that, and then we can talk Talena, Brooke, and Carrie.
So let's just give people a little context. Michelle Latondra had 6 career appearances during this time. She was not there in 2010, and then she got 25th, 24th, 13th, 4th in 2014, 18th, and 16th. So
very consistent, being not the fittest person, but really close.
And then Lindsay Valenzuela, 1 less appearance, 4th, but 3 top 10s during that time, 9th, 2nd, and 7th. You think there's potentially an argument for her to jump Latondra here?
I don't know, man. Maybe.
I kind of think there is.
I figured event wins.
It's very small. We'll keep it how it is. We both have Latondra, then Valenzuela. And then we'll bring in Brooke Wells and Carrie Pierce to the conversation for your sake here, John. But
just against Fortunato, not those other girls.
So we're going to say Christy Atkins Phillips. She also had 6 appearances during this time. She started off with a 6th in 2010, which John thinks is basically irrelevant. But she also had a 7th in 2013, which keeps her in the occasion. Wow, John, you actually do think that's irrelevant. Okay. And then 11th, 21st, 21st, and 24th. So no terrible performances, great consistency, no event wins, but two finishes inside the top 7. Maybe not that well known, especially because if you go back and look at leaderboards, she shows up as Christy Adkins and then as Christy Phillips, or the other way around. But it's the same woman. Very good career during the Carson era. So now we get to Talena Fortunato. If you're not familiar with Talena, she was 3rd place in 2012, 5th place in 2013, and outside of Valenzuela's 2nd place finish from 2014, between Akinwale, Latondra, Valenzuela, Atkins, Fortunato, Wells, and Pierce, she's the only one with a podium finish. I think that weighs pretty heavily, especially when we've already, you give a lot of credit to people for winning and said I couldn't really I justified some of their placements ahead of other athletes who might be fitter because they notched an event win. Also, kind of a fun note, even though it's irrelevant for our conversation, is Talena Fortunato podiumed in the very first Wodapalooza when there was no female division. She did it against only men.
Men, yep.
I don't know, John. I think the podium finish plays here and that she has to be the next spot because even as great as Brooke and Carrie did in that one year, they weren't that great the year before in 2015. And they weren't able to get on the podium. Carrie's best finish is tied with Talena's 2nd best finish.
I get that, but if do you count Talena's 33rd in 2014? Like for me, that almost makes her case worse.
Is it better if she hadn't showed up?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that this is like I had this conversation with Josh Bridges one time on Savon's podcast. He was giving me a hard time about factoring in some of his lower finishes later in his career. And he's like, I wasn't competing at 100% then. Like my knee was bothering me and this other stuff and whatever. But it's like, the field's continuing to get better. Everyone's continuing to get older, and it's always harder to maintain that excellence. I still would kind of fall back on what I said about Rebecca Voigt. Like, I'm not going to punish her for making it for 3 straight years that Val Vobril wasn't able to.
Well, I mean, just in the context of Brooke and Carrie both were there for 2 years, right? The hardest years. Let's put 2015 Talena Fortunato in that year and see how she does.
You mean 2012? Or
she wouldn't compete. Her best version, her podium version. 2013, 3rd place, 3rd fittest woman in the world in 2013. Let's put her in the 2015 field and let's see how she does. How do you think that person would do?
Mid-pack.
I don't think so. I think bottom 10.
Well,
bottom 10.
We won't know. So we're gonna call it a split here between me and John. I think that Talena deserves the spot for the podium finish ahead of Brooke and Carrie, and John does not. PC, you know what this means.
I know. And I'm gonna actually side on Brian's side on this, unfortunately. It's just like the body of work.
Don't say unfortunate. Say it with your chest. You go with the side.
Hey, I gotta stick with the guy that pays my paycheck. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think just Brooke and Carrie, as great athletes as they were during the Carson era, there's just not a whole body of work that matches up what Telena did, Fornado did. So I mean, it's not like we're not going to see them later on, or they're not the next two in. So yeah, I'm gonna have to give the edge to Brian on this one.
John, you know the rules.
That's fine.
You signed up to play.
It is what it is. No, it's fine.
So Telena is going to slot in at number 16. I do think that it's okay to have Brooke and Carrie come in as the next two. For context, John, we're gonna put Carrie ahead of Brooke here, correct?
Just because one finished that fifth, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be Carrie 17, Brooke 18, and just because I do think that it's relevant. Also, Carrie had two pretty impressive wins in 2016. Murph, obviously, anyone who was able to win that, it was Briggs and then her. It was BKG and then Josh Bridges, and all of those, winning that event stands out. And then she also won the separator, which is, a controversial workout in its own regard, but the inverted ring handstand push-ups, pretty demanding skill. We know her upper body pressing is second to none, but pretty cool event wins there. And Brooke did get one. It was in the ranch deadlift ladder that same year. Wasn't like there wasn't a huge fan base because they were off site at the ranch, but notable that she took dead last on the ranch trail run before that. Looked, quite frankly, terrible.
And nobody's got to know about that.
Had to go first with the least amount of rest, and still comes back and wins that event.
She did a Sam Dancer because he did the same thing that year as well.
Yep.
Oh man, poor Reggie hasn't learned how to run yet.
All right, so we're through 18. We got 12 to go. For the people that are listening in, some of these women may be more recognizable and well-known than you to others. All of them were still very good for the periods of time that they were competing here. John, let's I kind of feel like I had Pacelli and Tobias up here quite a bit higher than you did. Any reason why you had them down so low?
Well, we already agreed. We moved Christy up. That's one spot. Let me look at it real quick.
Just to put in context here, these are both women that enter into the back half of this era in Carson. They both show up in 2013, and they both finish in the top 10, 4th and 9th. Really kind of an interesting trajectory for both over the next 4 years, because Pacelli goes 4th, 23rd, 32nd, 9th. Mm-hmm. And then Tobias goes 9th, 22nd, 22nd, 10th. So they both have a pair of top 10s. Pacelli has a 4th. And then in 2014 and 2015, quite frankly, neither of them did very well. First of all, what happened in those 2 years for these two women?
Was 20.
I mean, you don't have to answer that, but just think about, like, most of the time, the pattern that we've seen as we go through this is you're good, and then you have a tailing off. To bounce back from not being inside the top half at the games 2 consecutive years, all the way back into the top 10. I mean, I think it's a pretty cool thing that stands out for both of them.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I have them way too low. 2014, I know Anna Tobias was cramping up on 333. Maybe that lasted with her. Pacelli is just bad at 333. Maybe that lasted with her.
And I mean, look, there are a million things that happens at the CrossFit Games, to little small things, health wise, injury wise, who knows, sleep, nutrition, whatever. There's tons of stuff that could happen. But I think that a good credit to them is a thing that I've talked about as being a good marker of a great athlete in this sport, is the ability to respond to adversity. So two years that could have been, taken a toll on them physically, mentally, emotionally, bounce back, have another top 10 finish each in the last season. And we've talked about how difficult that year in particular was. The women's field was incredibly strong. And each of them also managed to put up some event wins. Pacelli got legless in 2013 and basically redefined what a legless rope climb could look like in this sport, much in the way that Brett Marshall did with the butterfly pull-up. She had the butterfly clip for the legless rope climb with the legs helping out there. And she also won the very short, intense 100% workout in 2016. Anna Tobias is well known for obviously her Olympic career in sailing and also the ability to kind of go long. She wins the beach workout in 2014, sandbag 2015 and in 2015, and the rope tripper in 2016. I think that it's fair to say that these two are pretty closely tied together. Would you rate Pacelli's fourth place as being more in her favor than the 32nd is against her?
Yeah, I mean, once you hit the back half placements don't really weigh in for me as far as like, oh, this person was better than this person. Like a 26th to a 32nd, or a 22nd to a 32nd. That's that's not that.
Fourth to ninth is a big. That's a big gap.
Yes.
22nd to 32nd.
Or even in the top 10. I value a 9th over a 10th more than I would value a 22nd over a 32nd.
Wow. Okay.
Like the lower you get down there, those placements matter a lot more. Like a 22nd to a 32nd is literally one person that's like, okay, well.
So that's why that's exactly why we gave Talena the third place nod over Carrie's fifth and Brooks sixth. Mm-hmm. So well said, John.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Different years, but it's better. I'm fine with Pacelli and Tobias being the next two, 100%. I think I have them too, though. I think China Cho and Margot Alvarez kind of go hand in hand as well. Mm-hmm. We want to talk about them. Their careers are kind of similar, at least the back half is. But China having an 18th in 2010, a little hiatus going team. Yeah?
I think so.
Hiatus from individual, and then just, was feeling herself. So gave individual another crack, and then it was great. 15th, 6th, 17th in the hardest years of the era. Beating Margot in all of those years. So I don't think there's
I just think she just barely missed it those years. She was fourth place in 2012 NorCal, sixth place 2013 NorCal. So wow.
Just had some bad events then and regionals. But I don't think there's an argument for Margot over China. She routinely beat her every single year they were at the same CrossFit games. But I do think their careers are very similar.
Yeah, and I think, the one thing that China was lacking was any event wins. But she did have that sixth place in 2015, which I think ranks really highly for her. Margot Alvarez did have a very impressive event win in Pedal to the Metal 1. That's the workout that I was referencing earlier with regards to Katrin David's daughter. She did no pegboards. Sarah Sigma's daughter, no pegboards. Tia Claire Toomey, one pegboard. Margot Alvarez wins this workout in the debut of the pegboard at the CrossFit Games. She didn't finish the workout. She ended on the bike, but I think she was one of maybe two women that even got to the bike. And I think that, when you're talking about moments, that does weigh nicely for her. So yeah, I think that I'm good here with China 21, Margot 22. And then I'm looking at a woman here, that Michelle Kinney, that you did not have on your top 25. We originally submitted 25 names, knowing that we would have a few differences. This is one that I had that you did not. For if anyone's not familiar with Michelle, 4 years competing at the games. 17th was her worst finish. That was 2011. 10th in 2010. 8th place, her best finish in 2013, and 12th in 2014. Even though she didn't compete in 2015 and 2016, which are years that we do consider heavy, I think that, or weigh heavily. I think that it's pretty fair to have Michelle come in up right around this point.
I mean, that's fair. I would have Tovar ahead of her. Tovar essentially did the same, competed the whole entire thing. If you're going to give Rebecca Voigt credit, I think Tovar should get credit too, just by being able to still make the games. Had better finishes than Rebecca Voigt in those games too. 2015 for Stacy Tovar, she got 11th. That's pretty darn good, especially for women, like the tier that we're getting to.
Yeah, I think, like I said, Tovar 6 appearances during this time.
Invented the booty shorts. I feel like that has to count for something.
The white booty shorts.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I didn't factor that in when I was doing these rankings, believe it or not. And I'm okay with Tovar and Kinney kind of being the next two on this list if you are.
Yeah, I think there's an argument for Holty over Kinney, but I'm fine with Kinney being the next person.
All right, and so let's throw Kristen Holt into the mix here. She didn't have any finishes as good as those other women. Tovar's best were 11th and 12th. Kinney's best were 8th, 10th, and 12th. Holta's best placement was a 12th in that, but it came in 2016. She only competed 2014, 15, 16. All finishes between 12th and 17th. 2 event wins, triple three, kind of establishing herself in the field in a rookie year as being one of the great runners in our sport, and then sprint course 2 in 2015. I think it's good. It's good to mention her here in this conversation, but I think, yeah, man, it's tight. I think we should go with Tovar.
And then Kenny and then Holta?
Yep.
I'm good with that.
So that brings us 23, 4, 5. And then we're going to have 5 more women rounding this out. We just should mention we're only discussing the women that we kind of agreed to be. It's actually not going to be Angie Pye, their PC. We made a last minute a change there. But that's okay. That's good. It's going to be Christy Aramo. But we did talk about several athletes that end up not being in this top 30. We acknowledged that when we were talking about the men. Some guys that just barely missed out, like Pat Burke, Travis Mayer, Yonakoski, Tominski, etc. I know you love Tominski, John. And then the women's side, same thing. There's obviously great athletes that aren't going to make this list. We're just kind of cutting in at 30 here. So the last 5 women that we still have to decide between are Jennifer Assel, Emily Bridgers, Cheryl Brost, Deb Cordner Carson, and Christy Aramo. Of those women, the only one you had on your list was Bridgers. And I think that really she's leaning heavily on a 6th place finish from 2014.
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument Bridgers should be ahead of Astle.
Well, I mean, Astle was, yeah, they competed 2 years against each other. Bridgers beat her by 4 spots and 5 spots respectively, and Astle did have a 6th place in the year prior to that, whereas Bridgers follows up with a 29th in her last year of this era. So in order, their places are 6th, 10th, 29th versus 6th, 24th, 29th. But head-to-head, Bridgers beats her twice. It's really small margins.
In a harder era, Bridgers was going where Jennifer was going in a less.
So super small margins there, but I think the beating her out head-to-head both of those years, we can give to Bridgers. Fun note about Jennifer Assel, and I almost want to check this because I can't believe it. She did have an event win in her career, and if you had asked me this, I would not have gotten this right. Would you have known that?
Can I guess it?
Sure. Are you not looking at it?
No. Can you tell me the year?
2014.
Ooh.
I'm going to say it has to be something quick because people are just fitter than her. I'm going to say thick and quick.
Yeah. Yes, it is thick and quick.
Boom!
He's on it.
Yeah, and that's I think again the final day that year in 2014 got overshadowed by what was going on the men's side because it was Rich's last year, Fraser's first year, Kalipa was making moves. There's some big names historically in the sport, whereas in 2014 was Cara Webb withdrew from the competition. Camille is obviously a well-known name, but kind of was running away with it. And there in the midst of it all, Jennifer Assel beats out Annie Thorsdatter to win her only event win of the CrossFit Games, thick and quick. So I think she definitely deserves some credit for that. And that brings us to the last
third heat to do it too.
Yeah, and that was, of course, one of those workouts that was the isolation prior to the event. So the times weren't known. Everyone was kind of competing blind, which is a cool thing that doesn't happen, at least like specifically that often in the history of the CrossFit Games. I'm hoping it happens again this year.
Well, they don't know the event or don't know the times.
What do they call it? They detained them under the arena or something like that. Isolation, yeah. Yeah, where they just roll out one heat at a time, give them the information, let them do the workout, and then the next, heat 2 doesn't know what heat 1 did or their times that they did, that kind of thing. I think that it's time that we see something like that again.
Do you think that's more fun or chaos is more fun?
I think for the audience that this isolation method of rolling out 10 athletes at a time is more fun. Chaos is there's so much unknown and so much happening at once that you really can't appreciate anything. That's my opinion. I mean, outside of the winner.
Until after the fact.
Yeah. And even after the fact, if you go back and watch, it's really like you might see Amanda Barnhart passing a few people on the slug pull. and pull that out as a thing. Whereas but if you have 4 heats, then you have 4 different opportunities to see someone or some athletes do something that's special, cool, unique, or different.
Yeah.
All right, last 3 women here that we're going to have on our list, and kind of a variety of different resumes. So Cheryl Brost, if you're a fan of the sport now, you probably know her from the Masters division, multi-time champion. She's currently in the 50 to 54 age division, but at ages 39, 40, and 41, I believe, she was qualifying for the games as an individual in 2010, 11, 12, and she finished 13th, 7th, and 15th at basically 40 years old during that time period. I know that it's a era of the sport in this Carson era that wasn't necessarily as weighted as heavily, but pretty difficult to ignore. Basically a 10th place average over 3 years, especially when she's doing that at 40. Wouldn't you say, John?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like Deborah Cordner-Carson should be ahead of her, though, just for the event wins.
Yeah, so Deb Cordner-Carson also had 3 years competing. She did have to withdraw in her first year, which was 2011. She follows it up with a 13th, including 2 event wins that year on the sprint and Elizabeth, one of the girl workouts from the 3-part finale, and then 21st in her last season, which was 2014 or 13, excuse me. So, and then finally, we have Christy Aramo. Only competed once during this era, but it was a top 10 finish in that really competitive 2016 season. She was 9th. She didn't win any events that year. And I think that when we were the other women we were kind of considering for this spot may have had one finish similar or slightly better, but in a year that wasn't nearly as competitive. So I feel like it's okay to kind of give Christy the final spot on this list.
No, I agree.
All right. Well, that brings us 1 through 30 for the CrossFit Games Carson era. We see the top 10 there scrolling along the bottom. A super iconic. Or how far did you go on this, PC? Just 10?
All the way to 30.
All the way to 30. Oh, you get the full list. PC's been on it. And I think it's a nice tribute to obviously a defining era of the sport that kind of paved the way for Madison. By the time we finish in Madison, we will have 7 full seasons competing there as well, which will, be on par with this, and we'll likely do something similar. It's gonna probably be a lot more difficult as there's many more names entering the mix every year. And so obviously some incredibly high level performers that only show up for a couple years. I hope that it was fun for you guys to see the conversations on the back end. It's as I said in our first episode with the men, it's difficult for one person to kind of sit back and make sure they're evaluating everything fairly. Both John and I have had opportunities over these last 2 weeks to kind of listen to what the other person's saying and say, yep, you know what? I think in my evaluation of that, I might have had this person ranked a little too high or a little too low. When I actually sit back and look at the whole thing, it's nice to have another set of eyes and ears on it. So, John, appreciate you doing these, man. If you guys have not checked it out, we also have some written components to go with them. They're over on B.Friendly Fitness. I think we break them down into 3 articles, 30 through 16, 15 through 6, and then 5 through 1. Go check those out. Patrick's going to tell you if I don't. If you disagree, if you think there's someone we left off the list, we have no egos in that regard. Please let us know. We're happy to entertain it. We are very well aware of how difficult it is to make the games at all. Making this list is an honor. There was, like we said, some athletes that were considered closely for it that didn't make it, which is okay. Just like anytime we do the ranking show, we acknowledge that you can only have one athlete in any one spot. Patrick, anything you'd like to say before we close it out?
No, great job as always, guys. Fans out there, like we said from the beginning, like Brian said, if you really love this type of stuff, help us out. We have Patreon. If you just even a simple like, subscribe, and follow on our YouTube channel or in our social media, it means a world to us. So again, we appreciate everything you do. And I'm going to let you have the final word, Brian.
We will have some pre-sales coming out shortly for games apparel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, be on the lookout for it. Otherwise, we've got plenty of other content coming down the pipeline. So we will see you guys soon. And until that time, be friendly, our friends.